private schools that are Christian that do it well, do partner with the families well. But just be careful of private schools that are Christian in name only, I guess.
Other questions or comments? Somebody wants to participate?
Yeah, it was a very interesting speech that you gave there. I know it's such a very moment. Interesting to know, did you consider some form of church school rather than the public school for your kids to conservative school?
He's asking if, for church schools, we were going to homeschool. I was homeschooled through high school, and I really enjoyed it. I saw all the benefits of not having my time wasted inside of an institution, institutionalized people, look for institutions for solutions, and self-sovereignty. For us, we do not look.
Yeah, so again, there's so many different situations. There's like legal situations in all kinds of different countries and all kinds of constraints. Like, the goal with all this conversation is not like, you walk out of here and you should feel horrible. Like, the goal is just like, hey, there's trade-offs with every decision you make. There's trade-offs with all of the school decisions you make, your work decisions, all this kind of stuff. And so I think that's just the bigger thing is just, hey, there's trade-offs with everything you're trying to do, and so we all have situations that are different and all kinds of stuff. But the fact that there are exceptions doesn't disprove rules. Like there are rules and these kind of things. So with it, I know I have people, I have friends who do church school or classical Christian school. They do that and they love that and it's great. I absolutely would consider it. There are certain circumstances. In our case, and like even some of the seasonality to it as well. So, for example, I've got 5 kids right now. We're homeschooling the oldest 4, but like one of my kids does, we sort of supplement with a couple online classes. Like there's certain subjects, and as a parent, you're like, awful at math. Usually that's what with Christians, atrocious at math. So we do really good in reading and writing and all kinds of other stuff, but math just doesn't go with it. So like, all right, we'll get some help from outside, from either some sort of online program, or we'll go to a co-op, or a Christian homeschool co-op. That's another thing that I don't know if you talked about as well, but you guys create, work and try to facilitate co-ops. So in the event that you're sitting there, you're like, man, either time or whatever, or just skills or whatever, there's a lot of, at least in the United States, this is a more U.S.-centric conversation, but in the United States, there are in most cities, especially now, where homeschooling is kind of exploding since COVID. There's co-ops in a lot of places where you can find resources and people who've been walking the homeschooling road for decades, and take what's helpful and get rid of what's not.
My wife and I were my wife homeschooled our kids all the way up to high school, so I would highly recommend that. We did have one break because when my oldest was about 5 or 6, we had twins. My wife's like, no can do. We found a nice private civic school and put them in there first and 5th grade. So we got to finish up the kindergarten age and we brought him back home again. But yeah, talking about the co-ops, so we had several dads, like one was a weatherman, one was a doctor. I just the finance. The only reason I didn't help out with the math is I could see my kids cry at the table. See those being done. And then we did do co-op. So one of the families had a nice little town room that all the kids used to trace. Boys and girls separate. Of course, this was in the late 80s, early 90s, so it was a start now, so do it either way, I guess.
Hey guys, I wanted to ask you, thank you for the summary and it was wonderful. I recently met with someone who was as convinced about some of his old points as I am about Bitcoin. And I wonder, is there anything to it at all, or are they all,
key thing there is that as a first order approximation, that are all scams generally, the key thing is that they are not incentive. They're promoting people. Usually they bribe people to promote it for them. As with everything, you should look very carefully. The incentives for people that get rid of phones is to promote the phones, and that there's that. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of how it is. I think, superficially it looks very similar to Bitcoin, but this is where studying things kind of helps. Understanding what decentralization is, that will help.
The other thing because one of the pushbacks you get, okay, first of all, there's plenty of good people who are in these projects who literally are just like, oh, I'm fascinated intellectually by some of the problems that some of these projects are trying to solve. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you're not trying to hamper somebody or hamper or to judge somebody's creativity and like, oh, this would be cool to work on this problem. The thing that I have never gotten an answer for is like the fact that cool, this technology works this way. That does not require a token. Like the token it's just designed to be a fundraising vehicle with no oversight. Right? Like and so like if you're a normal company, you go out and you're like, okay, I have to present myself a certain way, I have to have a good idea, I have to be able to convey it, I have to, all these kind of things. In order to raise money, you have to do these things. With a lot of these tokens, it's just a way to raise a literally god-tier level of money with no oversight, to it. And so that's a humongous carrot for a lot of people to work with.
Yeah, some of them posed as solutions to things that really sound good, it'll be the level on top of Bitcoin for settling between countries and things like that. Do you think it's all like going after the same thing, make a bubble, let people come into it and then drop it?
Yes, right.
the tokens themselves, it's just like they're not. The incentives are that you can become a billionaire, literally. Not so much happen, but you can become a multi-millionaire in minutes just by virtue of people don't understand. There's traders who trade these projects and all kinds of stuff. It's really bad. Yeah, there's lots of them who know. Yeah, majority of them.
Well, Jimmy, first off, I'm not saying you're old when I'm asking this question, but I am seeing a little bit of gray in your beard now. You used to have it. You've been an OG Bitcoiner for a long time, and you compared your faith to, I would say, you've been a Bitcoin evangelist for a long time, and you've done both. How do you keep from getting to the point where you're like, man, I am done talking to people about Bitcoin. If they have not got it by now, then I'm done. You ever get to that place, and then how do you keep that ethos alive and keep you going with the energy that you have to keep being that evangelist word?
Thank you.
And you look great, by the way, man. You're making us all look bad.
It's as far as being an evangelist for Bitcoin, I truly believe that I've become a better evangelist for Christ as a result. So I learn a lot about how people learn things, what changes their belief, how to approach things, and more so internally, what gives me the confidence to go say things. And in a way, the first conference, I think, or the second conference I was invited to speak at, I still remember. I spoke about something, and I was it was kind of an all-point conference. Like a fun fact, I orange pilled 40 clips in it. But I was there talking to a lot of people about that, and it was there that I realized, there is no excuse for me to not talk about Christ with the same level of enthusiasm. And it kind of convicted, because during that conference, I met a guy, and somebody was asking me, I heard you have a lot of kids, I heard you're you're working here, you're doing this newsletter, you're speaking at conferences, you're doing these YouTube videos. How do you do it all? And I was like, well, I have these 4 priorities, and it's like sort of like a speech I have in my head. I have 4 priorities, and if it doesn't fall into them, I don't do it. So they all start with that, so it's easy to remember. Faith, family, finances, and business. That's it, right? A lot of other F's are very attractive. Football, baseball, right? But I don't do those things, and I have to help them out. And I said this to a bunch of people, and one of them was a guy that picked up on the faith part, and he said, I'm also I wanted you to know that. That guy ended up being Derek Walczak, who's one of the co-authors of Thank God for Bitcoin. And at the time, he had 5 kids. You heard that I had 6 kids. He actually decided to adopt another kid from China. And that was for me like a moment where I was just like, okay, God is working. And there is something about, and that was for me like God sort of saying, you need to be much more open about it and talk to people about it. And that's something that I've learned through Bitcoin is you can't be just sort of honest, right? The fiat world, when you're dependent on a job and you can get canceled at any time, fired at any time, it makes you very anxious, right? It makes you think, okay, well, something might happen to me if I reveal to people that I'm a Christian, that I go to church on Sunday, that I believe Jesus is the Son of God, that I believe that there are demons and angels and all this other stuff. That can be kind of nerve-wracking, but in a sense, like being in Bitcoin is kind of what I have to do all the time. Right? And it's weird because I learned a lot of that from an atheist Jew named Tom Bates. Right? I used to do these shows with him, and I always admired his honesty. Right? Like whatever take he had, he would just say it. And there's something very honest about that I think is very human. That comes closer to having some of the virtues that I talked about earlier, having courage, having fortitude, being prudent, being just, and all of those things. That there's a raw honesty that people respond to, that the fiat system sort of suppresses through many manipulative, propagandistic ways. That if you're free from, you recognize it. And and I encourage all of you, if you can, to try it. Just be honest. And it is, you're going to be surprised at the number of people that end up not necessarily agreeing with you and saying, how can I be saved, right? Like Paul and or I think Peter in Acts. But just have their minds change a few months later and come back to you and say, you know what? I started going back to church. And telling you, because change doesn't happen quite so dramatically most of the time. It's just a little bit of influence. That's all you can really ask for.
The other thing, just to kind of answer the other part of the question, I shared on Facebook to Robert, my mom, 6 kids, 6 friends from high school, and endless Chinese bots or something. I put this out a couple years ago. It was like, I can't wait for the day when I don't have to talk about Bitcoin anymore. I don't look forward to just talking about Bitcoin, but the harm that's being done by this existing system, it's doomed to fail, and the consequences on ministry and on families and on churches and all this kind of stuff, and the work the super important work that they're going to be able to do less of as a result of these things, compel me to keep talking about them. But there certainly are, it gets tight. Like people, if you're just out there, I want a job at Bitcoin. It's like, hey, be careful what you ask for, because it's great. It really is great. It's really impactful. It's having lots of things. But again, without comparing the relative importance of these two things whatsoever, have a new respect for the prophets, right? So you have Isaiah. God tells him to walk around naked for 3 years. And just can you imagine trying to run that one by the rest of the guys? And he's just like, listen, all this kind of stuff. And again, 3 years. It's imagine day 112 of this 3 years. You just sit there So it's just like one of these things where you're sitting there, you're out there, you're doing this, and nobody's listening. Nobody cares. And then you find, I say this lovingly, freaks like yourselves, and it just encourages you to keep going on. But yeah, I do just think it is one of these things where you're like, this is, not everyone's going to care. And this timeline, your goal is not to just, and our ultimate responsibility is just to be faithful with the information that we have and just continue to share that. And, truth, like information is a market, and there's a lot of people for whom they won't be ready to hear it and do something about it. So we reach the tipping point of like 60% plus, Sean Ryan and Tucker Carlson and whoever else, once they get on board, then, that's just the way normal people work. Instead of, okay, we have until, I think we have a couple minutes. We have, all right, we'll go for another 7 minutes. It's not till 11:30 that should go, so we still got a few more minutes. It starts at 11:30. It's like a 3-minute walk over here, so we'll give ourselves 5 minutes to be able to go.
In our San Antonio Bitcoin Club, once a month we'll have get a hold of you, or a speaker, or we'll just talk about Bitcoin stuff that's on the news. But on the half month, we started doing another meeting. It's kind of focused on your vote a little bit, or we call it like per Bitcoin. And we'll talk about a lot of parallels between being talking like honest ways versus honest money. Try to pull little numbers like that out. So I know I am in a small group of people even older than me, if that's possible. And I'll wear, my shirts once in a while, and they'll make a comment about it. And they'll inevitably bring up things like, rock the beast and stuff like that. No, you're talking about CBDC, not Bitcoin. But they probably won't go in the crowd. It's a try.
Yeah, I find that a lot of times with Bitcoin and with talking about Christ, oftentimes you just have to let people know that you're into them. So you were talking about like sort of evangelizing Bitcoin. I don't really do that. I don't need to. People already, everywhere I go, or all my social circles, they already know I'm into Bitcoin. Sometimes because I'm wearing a shirt that says, God damn country Bitcoin or whatever. But our people know that. And same thing with Christianity. All my Bitcoin friends know that I'm a Christian, right? And when they're curious, they'll come and ask me. And that's really all you're asking. You're not, Isaiah obviously had to do some crazy things, and he's appropriately blessed because of that. But vast majority of the time, all you have to do is just raise your hand and say, hey, I'm a Christian, hey, I'm a Bitcoiner. And the people will find themselves coming to you because, hey, I want to talk about Christ with that person, right? Like one of my friends, Bitcoin friends that I do CrossFit with, he took me aside and was just like, hey, do you know about this shower term thing? Okay. Why are you curious? Well, I've been doing this Bible study with this guy in my building, and he just you don't have to be the savior bridge, right? There's other people that are in their lives. You just have to play your role, and just do your job. And vast majority of the time, it's just I'm a Christian, I'm a Bitcoiner, and they'll come and ask you when they're ready. That's all.
Yeah, I just remind everyone, as ambassadors, wherever you are, you are ambassador of Christ. So that's a 24/7, 365 thing. And so we shouldn't be hiding it. Whether you're a trash collector or a pastor or a teacher, that we have that responsibility. And so my point of my talk was that the fiat world is inherently anti-God in all of these things. And so the reason people come to Bitcoin, I think, is because they realize that their money's being inflated away, or they have this moment, right? We all have that moment where we realize we have to go figure out something else. And the same thing with Christ, right? This world is going to promise you everything and give you nothing, and strip everything away. And so for I think as us as Christians, like we just need to be ready to share the gospel at any point and not be afraid of it, not think that God did not call you to sit on the bench. Oh, you're a Christian, come sit on my bench, I'll call you if I need you. When you're a disciple of Christ, it's a 24/7 thing.
Do we have time for one more? Yep. Okay.
Jimmy, you made a couple comments that are very provocative about ways in which Bitcoin activity. I would like you to come back to that and say a few things to us others too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Jordan kind of wrote a whole book on this. The gospel according to Bitcoin, he's going to go get it right now. But basically, that book he wrote was specifically because we saw this phenomenon where a lot of Bitcoiners end up coming to Christ in some way. A lot of them grew up in the church, so for them it's going back to church. For a lot of others, it's just, I grew up atheist, but, like, this is a truth that I can handle. And they start investigating it and realize there's definitely something to it. The way I like to describe it is that Bitcoin is little truth. And there is something about it which it's a little hard going down, but it tastes really good, right? Like there's something very satisfying. It might be a little bitter at the beginning, but it tastes really good. It's satisfying. And when you taste that, you start looking for other truths. Maybe it's your diet, right? Like a lot of them completely change their diet after getting into Bitcoin. Maybe it's stuff like homeschooling, right? A lot of Bitcoiners are homeschooled. I can tell you that. Maybe it's having more kids. A lot of Bitcoiners do that. Maybe it's even getting married and settling down and doing things like that. Again, all very common in Bitcoin. But then you come to the capital of Jesus Christ. And boy, that goes down a little bit, but it is extremely satisfying. And that's, I think, what they're all craving. There's something about that where a lot of them end up going to church, end up giving their life to Christ. And a lot of them have like a very deep conviction about it. Similar conviction that they have in Bitcoin, because they learn, right? There is something that is true, and they can sort of like center their lives around it, and they go, okay, yeah, this is worth giving my life for. Because you can give your life to educate people on carnivore diet, or, homeschooling, or whatever, but ultimately, those are not fulfilled, right? They require something a lot deeper. And people come to it in many other directions too. And I think that's something that we should acknowledge. A lot of people come to Christ through 12-step programs, right? Because they realize they need something. And they tasted a little bit of the truth that really you're not your own God, right? And then they come and give themselves over to God. And that process, I think, can be similar in a lot of instances where you do discover truth, where you do realize, okay, it's not about who I am or what I want to be true. It's about reality as it is. And the reality is a certain way, and I have to conform to it, the ultimate reality. So, yeah, and that's at least my take on it. Jordan can tell you more about specifically how it works with it.
Jesus built Bitcoin.
Or, Christ built it.
Here you go. Yeah. And we've got like 1 minute, negative 1 minute. So, but just real quick, we have this book. We wrote it. It's called Gospel According to Bitcoin. We're going to republish this under the name Mere Bitcoin because it just communicates more. Like this is designed to be like mere Christianity for Bitcoiners. That's really what this is. This takes a bunch of little elements of what Bitcoin is. And actually, Dan Sherman, raise your hand right there. So Dan works with it's a Canadian ministry called Power to Change, which is the Canadian wing of Crew. You guys are familiar with the former Campus Crusade. So Dan, actually, fun story, used to be Wes Huff. You guys know who Wes Huff is. He was Wes Huff's boss. Wes Huff's store. So crazy story. What is it?
We're a very short time.
Very short time. For like years. Wes Huff knows everything he knows. We wrote this book, Dan wrote the majority of it, did a great job, and so you can pick it up. Let's go see some cows. Let's do it. Thank you, Nathan, we'll be back in a little bit.